Good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. Sorry, I'm just still getting used to Windows 10 and everything being in slightly different positions, and it just makes starting up the stream a little bit more sort of awkward than before. It's not quite the right word I'm looking for, but it's just getting used to where everything is. I'm going to need to order some more threads, but in the meantime I've got another reel of similar green that we're going to use to carry on with doing this grass down here, and then move on to working on the sky. I'm hoping we'll get to the sky tonight. That still remains to be seen. Well, I suspect we won't actually get to the sky tonight. We'll get to the hopefully get to the point where we can start it on the next stream. That's right. Okay. So I just need to thread this needle, which is probably off camera at the moment, but if you've been watching it for a while, you've probably seen me thread a needle multiple times and potentially get frustrated with it to the point where I start talking to the thread. Trying to show it who's boss. Usually the thread wins. And I need to switch out my glasses, which reminds me, I don't know where my glasses case has gone. Oh yes I do. I left it somewhere. I shall have to go pick it up later. But I shall just swap them. That way I can see what I'm doing a bit easier. Put them to one side. Right, and we are ready to carry on with this green. 1, 2, 3. Actually I won't want it on 3. Because what I'm going to do is do around this edge first and then fill in from there. And I'm going to cut my voice or throat last for this stream. I've had a sore throat yesterday and I've still got a bit of it today. It is affecting my voice, I can feel it, so I'm going to keep drinking and hopefully it will be okay. Let me tilt this down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, because I will be working with the hoop this way for a little bit whilst I do around this corner here, because I have to work sort of right into the edge of the hoop for this bit. Well, I have just this evening discovered something totally brand new about Windows 10 that I didn't know before, which has just solved a problem for me. So whilst I'm just doing this, I thought I might mention it in case anybody else has Windows 10 and might also be getting irritated by the same thing, and that is the pop-up notification messages. I've got a few which are repeating themselves. Things like backups need to be done, and that get done automatically later on in the evening, and restarts, and my antivirus keeps trying to tell me some things and stuff like that. And yesterday, well, I did the update last Saturday, and through just about every stream there's been bings going off when Windows is telling me all these things, and it's kind of irritating for them to go off in the middle of a stream. But what I have just discovered is that they're you can turn them off, sort of temporarily, shall we say, because I don't necessarily want to turn notifications off permanently, but I don't want them going off at 2 o'clock in the morning, for example, if my PC starts up, or during a stream when I'd rather it didn't suddenly start playing bings and things. So what I discovered is at the bottom of the notification window there is a little tile that says quiet hours, You click that, it lights up, and supposedly no notifications. Old hat. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the studio. I'm not sure I'm fed up with switching glasses. These are slightly better. I can use the other ones, but these are just slightly better when I'm working at close distance like this. And I have had contact lenses in, but to be honest, they were just a bit more fiddly than everything else, so I've gone back to glasses. But they're not. It's not too bad to keep swapping them out. It's just, just things are just a slight bit clearer, and that's only because my prescription has changed between the two sets of glasses. Yep, something's jammed. When the thread jams, it starts pulling out the loops that you've just put in, which is a little bit irritating sometimes. So I'm doing little short loops just around the outside, which makes the edges sort of somewhat smoother and rounder and gives a better finish to the edge of the image. But I have to be a lot more precise about placing those loops, because they are so small that I've got to get them really close to each other, otherwise it just looks, you can see the material between the loops and it looks a little bit messy. And it's really hard to go back in afterwards and just put additional loops in, because you've got to get the position just right. Okay, so we've hit that end, so now turn around and come back. Now this is quite a slow process compared to doing doing the rest of it, just because of the precision that's needed. So it won't be long, and then you'll be able to see a little bit better what I'm doing as I move the hoop around. Actually, before I get to where that place got stuck, I'm going to cut off that extra loop of thread that I created. There we go. That'll stop it getting in my way, because the thread always has a tendency just to go where you're trying to push the needle through, so you can't actually see what you're doing. It's like it's being magnetised to the needle. Be like pussycats that always want to sit just where you're working. we're actually probably about 2/3 of the way through the whole picture now, but I'm expecting this last sort of third to go fairly quickly, with them being very large blocks of colour. A lot of the time is spent in changing direction or indeed changing colours. So you spend, obviously on the main detail of the image, you spend quite a bit of time. Now, today is Wednesday, so I've actually remembered it today, which means we're halfway through the week, and which actually means it's halfway to the weekend. Has anybody? Is it? No, it's not a. It's not a UK bank holiday yet. That's at the end of this. Yes, at the end of this month, if I remember correctly. So, has anybody got anything fantastic planned for the weekend, or anything like that? I know if just Jessup's around, he's just come back from holiday, but. Just before I go a bit further, I'm just going to turn a fan on because it's a bit warm in here. It's been raining just around here in the UK, and the humidity's up. There we go. Hopefully that won't show up too much on sound, but it will keep me cool. Right. Yeah. I was thinking one of these days what I ought to maybe do is, because I do quite like this engine, I was just wondering, I'll have to have a look and see if it's still up at the York Railway Museum, because if it is one of these days, I guess I should really go take a look at it. It's one of those, the York Railway Museum is one of those sorts of things that, one of those sorts of places where, I guess everybody has them in their own home locations, and you never visit them. There are all these sorts of things that the rest of the world does, and just because you live in the place, you just never think about going. Quite a few sort of places like that in Yorkshire that I've kind of always felt like maybe I ought to go to, but never have. And there's quite a lot of places just in England generally like that. Places like, I don't know, Stonehenge, or national monuments and things like that. I have been, or at least near some of the other things that do get our tourist locations, shall we say, especially down in London. So things like Tower Bridge and the Palace of Westminster and the London Eye. I don't think I've been near the Shard yet, but it is something that you can see from quite a long distance away. Fear7, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. One of the things that does fascinate me about London is all the underground stuff. Whether it's just the underground itself and things like all the we'll call them lost stations, but stations that are no longer there. That they exist, but trains don't stop and you can't go into them. And I quite often spend quite a few hours on the internet reading about quite a few of those on the London Underground, and some that were stations that were built that never got joined to the network, that were built during the wartime as air raid shelters. And then you get things like the Post Office Underground Railway in London, and all these sorts of things that nobody normally knows exist below their feet as they're walking on the street. It's quite fascinating sometimes. Of course, not a lot to do with steam engines, but you still got a hold of some green thread. Yes, this one though is I think it's a slightly different shade, but that's why I spent some time last night doing this shade in such a way that when I did this one it kind of just looks like another patch of grass rather than sort of cut off in a really sort of odd way. I didn't actually, but in the end I didn't actually go looking to see if I got any matching, but mainly because I completely forgot about it. But as I say, because of the way it was done, it doesn't actually matter. That was a lesson I learnt with the last locomotive that I did in Punchcraft, where I ran out of the sky blue and the new batch was very slightly different colour. Took a fair bit of time to blend that in so it isn't visible. So now I check before I start. I'm either going to have enough or I know exactly how I'm going to change between the shades. So have you given up on your papercraft, Fear Reaper, or are you going to have another go at it? Yeah, you're careful. Well, keep an eye out and you might come across sort of a material that you can actually use. It's just the right thickness, and then you'll be able to have another go at it. We're almost finished with this edge, so we can get more of a move on. Yeah, funny enough, I was just thinking that I ought to sit back a little bit and just relax my back because I was leaning right over the table. I was also thinking for, I don't know, maybe for some of the scraper board stuff. What I've got is I've got a small desktop easel which is just sat down there, and that might be an idea to use for doing the scraper board, at least, just because it'll put it at an angle and I'd be able to sit back and work on it like I would do with a drawing, and maybe something like that might help with you if you do go back to papercraft, at least to do the cutting on and what have you, so that you can sit back and not be leaning forward. I know it is a natural thing to lean forward. I'm doing it all the time, and I keep having to remind myself to sit back and just relax so that I don't get that backache the same as you've got there. Come along now, thread. You should be able to support me going quite a bit faster. And if I do use a needle, a needle, I mean, I'm using a needle, but if I do use an easel, it's going to get interesting with the camera positioning again. Trying to get that in the right position, and the lighting, of course, will change. Actually, it might make the lighting a little bit easier, because that's what we found doing the scraper board, was we needed to tilt it up a little bit. Can't really do that for the carving, or maybe you could do it for the pyrography as well. So that might be something I'll experiment with when we get round to doing that next pyrographic item. And I've just like I was about to say, got an idea, but it's more of an inspiration for a new item for the jewellery when we start doing the jewellery, which will be after this is complete. An idea for a new bracelet, which should be quite delicate and sparkly. So we'll be able to try that out. I say we in all of this, of course. You're welcome to get materials and sort of join me in at the same time if you like, but essentially it'll be me doing it here and you guys watching. But it's funny the way we use language, isn't it? Have I hypnotised you all yet? I've been watching this needle punch back and forwards through this through this material. I'm just watching my stream playing back, and it looks quite violent, doesn't it, when you push with me punching this needle through from that side. Looking from where I am, I'm not seeing the same view. So, but just watching my stream back, it does now look quite violent. I'm sure that the material doesn't feel a thing. Well, whilst I'm doing this, I'll just say welcome to anybody that may be watching watching the studios, not been around before. And if you have been around before, welcome back. Thank you for dropping in. If you are new, you won't particularly realise that this is only one of 5 different crafts that I do on stream. I do each of them in turn, doing one art or craft piece, depending on your point of view, in each of the 5 different crafts, and just go around them in a circle like that, one after the other. So this one is Punchcraft. I don't know quite what its more generic name would be. Punchcraft is a name which is sort of being initiated by the manufacturer of this particular tool, but the technique has been around for quite a long time, and using similar methods, and indeed rugs, for example, have been made this way for quite a number of years. Other crafts that we do pyrography, which I describe as painting with heat, so using an electrically heated tool to change the colour of wood and create an image that way. There's then scraper board, which I mentioned a little bit ago, which is a medium which is clay spread on a backing board and then covered in Indian ink, and the art then is created by scraping off that Indian ink in various ways to form an image. So it's a black and white image, although you can apply inks to colour it as well. I also will do carving, relief carving, using hand tools. So that's relief well, I may even try full 3D carving. I was about to say relief carving is kind of like 2.5 dimensional carving. So it's the piece remains fastened to a backboard, so it's a bit like it's if you take an object, I don't know, like a car, cut it in half and stick that half onto a board. That's kind of what relief carving looks like. So Punchcraft, carving, pyrography, and scraper board, and the 5th one is chainmail or jewellery making. I generally describe it as jewellery making rather than chainmail, just because everybody tends to think of making armour when you say chainmail, whereas the stuff I make is pretty jewellery. Lots of sparkly colours and small chains, necklaces, bracelets, that sort of thing. So that's the 5 crafts, each in turn. The next one after this is complete will be the jewellery making, but that's unlikely to be before the weekend. Just whilst this is a quick art form, it still takes a appreciable number of hours to complete a piece like this. If there's anybody watching that has any questions on those, feel free to ask them in chat if you wish to do so. Outside of those 5, but not something I do on stream, is glass engraving. I also do carving using high-speed rotary tools, and by high speed it's kind of like 300,000 RPM, which makes a Dremel look like it's standing still. Airbrushing is but just generally onto paper, not even onto to canvas, so certainly not, I don't do cars or anything like that. What else do we do? Rug making, 2 different kinds of rug making, mainly latch hook, which is kind of taking short lengths of wool and knotting them around a carrier, and I do that to create pictures. But there is also a way using a needle similar to this but larger to actually create images that way as well. And just got quite a few things around here. quite a bit of cross stitch work to do, and other similar related needle crafts, and do make models, but not really got around to completing some of those yet. So quite a few things. May see about doing some them later on stream, but not for quite a while yet. Just got to pull the material tight as you punch through gradually over the period of time of doing this piece of work. You gradually pull the material through this hoop. It's only held in place by friction, quite a bit of friction really, but there's a relatively large amount of force applied to the needle sometimes to get it to go through the material, and that just pulls, gradually pulls it through the loop, and you do then need to just tighten it up sometimes to make it easier to carry on working. Well, everybody seems really quiet tonight. You're just so mesmerised by what I'm doing here, or is it just because it's a Wednesday and it's kind of the middle of the week and yeah, indeed it does. Although so very occasionally with programming, I'll get a something I'm working on where it'll just flow. It almost writes itself, and you don't really notice what you're doing. So this is a PHP framework you were referring to the other night that you're working with at the moment, is it, Fear Reaper? Yeah. Don't worry, I shall let you concentrate. um, I just recall that today I had somebody who's looked at my some of the previous videos that are stored on Twitch, and mention that my voice is particularly quiet on them, which is, you know, a fair enough comment. And I have sort of turned this microphone up a little bit as well, although today my voice is just quiet anyway, just because of the slightly sore throat that I've still got. But I was just laughing to myself then, because I'm not saying a particular great deal at the moment, and that's going to make it really quiet. Fluffy Twiglet. That is quality lurking, was that, until you know, that slight little movement gave you away then. Good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. Isn't that something about ninja law? You only give you only give yourself away if you choose to give yourself away. Indeed. Yes, Irish Lurker, tonight I did manage to check that the microphone was live as I started the stream this time. Well, I don't know about the talking bit. My voice is a little bit off, as you may be able to tell. I developed a sore throat yesterday, which was a bit uncomfortable last night, and it's mainly gone today, but my voice is still a little bit impacted by it. Although I say it's nearly gone. I'm hoping it's nearly gone, it's just not changing to something else. Yes, this is the grass bit, Fluffy Twiglet. 4 different shades of green. There's only supposed to be 2, but it works quite nicely with 4. These 2 sort of green greens are supposed to be the same, and the 2 lighter greens are supposed to be the same, but the threads are from different batches and they have slightly different colours, but it's grass. Grass comes in different colours, so it kind of works. I trust both you, Fluffy Twiglet and Irish Lurker, are doing well. And my feedback window has crashed, or rather Twitch has stopped sending me my own picture back. So I'll just kick that off again. I'm now looking at this bobbin and thinking, I wonder if there's going to be enough to actually finish this section. And I'm actually hoping that there is. Problem is, you can't scrimp on it in any shape or form. You can stretch the loops out a little bit, but not a significant amount. Otherwise you just end up showing the white through and it doesn't look very good, and you end up still having to fill it in, but well, if I was so inclined, and it probably wasn't against Twitch's terms and conditions, I could run a little better around now as to whether or not I'm going to have enough thread. But if anybody wants to make a prediction, they're welcome to do so. I'm not altogether sure, because it's really surprising how quickly the thread disappears. I was wrong on the last time I did this. I was wrong in that I thought it might just last and it didn't, so I'm not quite sure what it's going to do this time. Can you see what the other side? Yeah, just a minute, let me cut this off. With it being a big section, I'm just kind of carrying on, but there we go. Let me tip the camera up a little bit so you can see it and move that out of the way. That's what it looks like so far. And the bit at the bottom, it's like a moment it looks a bit like water at the bottom, but it needs filling in. There you go. I'm not quite seeing the white at the moment, just because of the light from the top. It's making it difficult for you to see between the locomotive and the sky, but when we get the sky filled in, that'll be a lot awesome. It will be a lot awesome. A lot more visible, and thank you very much for that, Fluffy Twiglet. That's kind of you to say that. And looking at that way reminded me that I'd missed out some places in there which I would do, and I was just about to do them, but I'm going to make sure I've got enough to finish this first. Otherwise I can fill those in with a slightly different colour, and nobody will notice those areas, but if I don't, this one will be a little bit more visible. You can tell I'm starting to concentrate, my tongue's starting to stick out. Quilling. That's interesting. That's, I was about to say paper straws, but it's wrapped paper, isn't it, if I remember correctly. Though I don't actually remember much more about it than that. I have heard of it, but would you like to say what it actually is, Fluffy Twiggler? It certainly sounds interesting, but I'm not about to start and do it, but I'm trying to think now. And certainly it'd be great to see some of the things you do with it if you do. And if we could persuade you to stream as well, that would be even better. Yes, by all means, Fluffy Twiggler, you may post a link. You may post a link, that's okay. I do trust you to be responsible in doing that, so that's you carry on. Let me take a look at that one as well. Oh wow. Go away, Pinterest. If I want it to log in, I'd do so. I hate sites that do that. They're kind of forcing you to log into things. If I want it to, I'd you know, if I was that sufficiently interested, I'd create an account. But when things like this Pinterest forces you to, in order to see something, and this one's half covering up the image, it's kind of like, thank you, I'm not interested in your site at all because of that. And then it sort of misleads you. Things like you know, log in or continue. You'd assume continue means continue. You know, I'll carry on looking at it. I might get around to making an account. No, continue means I'm going to force you to, because I'm going to make the whole screen black. But it is it's a lovely image, is that one. And I can see what you mean in a way with. You know, it's why are I doing something like that type of thing. That really is good. Yeah, that's really good. Pity for the person that whose image it is, that it's spoilt by the way in which Pinterest try and force you to join their site. If you do take that up for free Twiddler, I will look forward to the images that you do create. Sorry, this is off. So I took this back down off camera, but it's a little bit close to the edge, and I need to just move it into a direction that's comfortable for me to do this in. I've almost finished the green, and getting quite close to running out of the green thread, but I think we're going to manage it. So if you had a private wager with yourself, I think the verdict is that we will end with some thread left. Right, we shall cut that off, and I'll turn it over, and we'll just see. I think there's a couple of places that may be just a little bit light on loops. We shall have a look and see what it looks like. That's not bad. Pull this material back through the hoop and tighten up the thread material a little bit. So there we go, that's the lower half. Next bit, sky. and I think this is a 30-metre reel, and we started it, so there's I don't know what's left. Even if you say 5 metres, there's still sort of 25 metres of thread in that darker green bit down there, which you can only just see on the camera if I do. I don't know why, for some reason this green looks blue. Theme Hospital, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. This camera has some really weird colour perception. That looks like a really pale green, and it's not. In fact, yeah, it looks like a really pale green, and it's not. And that looks on camera what this looks like to me in real life. And then this down here, which looks blue, is a really rich grass green, if you like, a slightly darker version of this. And yet this on camera looks like that does to me. It's weird. Really weird. And why that looks blue, I don't know. This camera has some sort of affinity with blue. Its blue sensor must be just a lot more sensitive than everything else. But in any case, we're going to move on to blue now, so maybe it'll make it look better. So let's see what we've got in the way of shades. See, these actually are two different. These are all numbered because the number is kind of the, well, it's not a shade number, but it's a sort of a recognition number. I'm looking at those and I can just see that those two are different. And you can just about see that on the camera as well. Yeah. So I'm actually going to use that blue, but I was kind of wondering whether to use no, that's a bit too light and looks a bit too sort of cyan turquoisey. So these look more like you expect sky to be, I guess. So we shall go for these. I've got 3 reels, which hopefully if I can do it, crossing all my fingers is enough. What are they doing? Oh, there it is. The needle threader. So one of those is just partially used, so we'll start with that one. Now I do have a slight advantage with this in that there's a large, it's split into almost 2 halves, this half and this half, because of the smoke and steam at the top here. So with it, even though these 3 are as far as I can tell the same shade, if there's any slight differences between this side and this side, you literally won't notice it until just this bit across the top here, and that's when the 2 will join together. What I might make sure I do is kind of stop here just off the point of the smoke, and that way then if there is any difference between these 2 halves, it kind of will look like a bit like a heat haze type of thing, or you might explain it to yourself like that, even though the truth is the shades are just different. Now that's a nice polite thread, it went straight through without a problem. need to do some. I'm gonna only come up to about here to start with, just the edge, and then I'll fill that in, and then I'll do a bit more, just again from the point of view of running out of thread, trying to keep it in horizontal lines, so that if there's a difference between shades it won't stand out quite so much, because it will look kind of naturalish. I'll tilt that camera down a little bit down there, and I'm just going to work in this corner. So I've got this set at position 1. So again, I'm working right in the corner. And just following the curve of the loop around. So I've got no lines or anything drawn on the inside here as to where the edge is. A little bit more, and then we'll yeah, that'll do. We'll come backwards in a moment. I'll just get rid of the thread at this end before I get back down here and it gets in my way. Tap the needle depth a little bit. Right, we can fill this block of the sky in there. Because I almost have got poetic there, you know, talking about how this will make the locomotive stand out in its natural environment of the wide open rails, and Pity I'm not a very poetic person. I suppose you can only be creative in a certain number of ways. And writing isn't really one of mine. I know most of you watching are creative in one shape or another, or one form or another. Do you find that it's something which is sort of, you're generally creative? You like creating things, even it's outside of the way in which you normally that you practice now, in completely different things like writing or building things, painting houses or anything like that, or is creativity just restricted to the sort of one or two things that you sort of do as your hobby? I kind of find I have an interest in sort of doing anything that's creative, and I used to play instruments, and though I never wrote music at all. No, that's again, I can't do that. I like reading books, but I can't write them. But all sorts of three-dimensional sort of carving, pottery, anything. Sculpting gardens kind of just interests me as a creative outlet. Might choose not to do them, but especially if it's the garden bit. But they do interest me. Okay. I don't tend to think in terms of whether I could actually do it, and it just, things just, it's like watching Poke Ranger or the glass blowing and glass moulding and things like that. It's something I probably never would be able to do, but I do sort of like and enjoy watching it and things like that, and it sort of interests me the way in which it is done. But just sometimes you just wonder if my perspective of it's creative, therefore whatever it is, programming, writing music, poetry, not good at that, but constructing desks, anything like that which is creative, it's sort of something that interests me. But I just kind of wondered whether it was a relatively unique viewpoint. YDK Panic. That's an interesting name. Thank you very much for following. That is most kind of you. I do appreciate you for doing so. Thank you very much. I'd certainly be interested if there's a story behind that name. It sounds like they should be, or how you just trying to torture us poor streamers by choosing names which are very difficult to pronounce. I'm sure some viewers do that on purpose with some of the names. Not that I mind in particular. I mean, it's fun sometimes trying to work out how to say things, but you can, it certainly adds to the uniqueness of the name. Okay, fair enough. So now you know what the notification looks like. And rain clouds. I'm assuming you're watching, so thank you very much for hosting, and welcome to the studio this evening. We're getting quite a bit. I know it doesn't look it, but we're getting quite a bit closer towards the end of this particular piece and the finish of the locomotive. I think it will be. It'll be nice if we can finish it on Friday's stream. Although that hope is kind. Mind you, I was just thinking, I need to order some more materials for the next craft that gets done. Which, if we finish this on Friday's stream, will be Saturday. and it's kind of more rings and things like that, because I'm a little bit short in certain ones, and you go through them really quickly, relatively speaking. You go through a couple of hundred rings an hour easily, and a couple of hundred rings is, it doesn't sound many, and then but it does sound many, but that's quite a quite a large proportion of my stock. And if I go through a couple of hundred rings, or 200 to 400 rings every broadcast, and I get through them really quickly, so I do need to order some more, and so I do hope they arrive before Saturday. Otherwise the jewellery making streams may be cut a little bit short. Theme Hospital as well, thank you. That's okay, Rain Clouds. Thank you very much for just dropping in anyway, and for the host. Theme Hospital. Thank you also for hosting. That's very kind of you. And Twitch has stopped sending me my stream back again. You accidentally double-click the host. I don't think you can you? Or does it unhost when you do that? I don't know. I don't have a button to do it. I just have to type it into chat. I guess maybe better Twitch TV or one of those will maybe gives you that button, but I've not come across it yet. I was just thinking then that of these two threads, one of them is called baby blue, the other's called sky blue, and off the top of my head I couldn't tell you which one is which at the moment. But I was just thinking, when you get if you buy these threads, and you can buy them as kind of a kit of one of everything, but when they supply them, they just supply them as bobbins. I wrote numbers on them, and they give you a colour chart which is printed on paper. And of course, when you print things on paper, shall we say, colours don't always bear any resemblance to what they actually are, and bearing in mind shades and the fact that shades can be different, you've a devil's own time of working out which is the right colour, what it's supposed to be. So that if you've ordered only one of them, you know what it is, assuming they sent you the right thing. But when you get one of each, or you get two of each, you can't tell them apart. I was just thinking then it would be nice to have some way of doing that, because, like, you know, let's say one of those is baby blue and one is sky blue, and they're so similar, and I basically either can't order them together in the same replacement order, or I've got to order a different number of each just so I can tell them apart. It's a pity the manufacturers don't put some sort of label around them, or just number them. Possibly, not sure though. I'm not sure which one is the sky blue. I'll maybe have a look at the darker one. Yeah, I'll maybe have a look and see whether you were right, Fluffy Twiglet. But in these days, to some extent, it doesn't make too much of a difference, because I just go, well actually I want that colour. I just look at the colour. I do have to keep numbering them so that like when I've run out of the green, which I ran out of, I know which one to order. But how is the thread staying in the cloth? Friction, basically. What the needle is doing is it's kind of, if you imagine your fingers, the needle is kind of pushing between your fingers, and it drags the thread through on the outside of the needle. So the thread sort of holds, sorry, the cloth holds the thread on one side while you push it through, which draws more thread down the needle. So when you pull it back, that loop, you create a loop. It basically is just left until the very last point where you pull the needle out, and the material closes up and sort of grasps both halves of the thread, leaving the loop on the other side. I can't, with it, because I've got the needle, I'm using the needle at the moment, I can't easily show you, but I can, if you remind me when I've done this block, I can sort of show you sort of in my hand how it works. But essentially it's just the gap closing up, and the friction holds the loop on the other side. The shape of the needle is intended to try and get the material to sort of push apart, so like you're pushing your finger through I don't know, a wool jumper or something like that. You can push it through, and as you pull it back, it just forms back into shape. The cracking, if you hear it when I do push the needle through, does mean that the needle is that crack that you hear is it breaking a thread. But it's kind of like one in lots, and so it doesn't materially sort of create great big holes or anything like that. And I'm not actually punching holes as such, I'm sort of pushing them. How long have I been doing this? I've been doing, this particular piece or this particular art form. This art form I've been doing for about 3 years, or 3 or 4 years. Actually, time flies. It's probably closer to 5. This particular piece is now 14, 16, 18, almost 20 hours to get to this stage on this particular piece. And there's probably at least another 4 hours to finish it, so about 24 hours to complete this. This is quite a, relatively speaking, quite a large piece. It's about 12 inches in diameter. I generally don't do any, or I haven't done any larger than this, but generally I do, or have in the past, worked on smaller images. But I figured these bigger ones would probably be better to see on stream, just because there's, it's a bigger image. And I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name, I apologise, but welcome. What's the art form called? I don't know what its generic name is called, but the manufacturer of the particular tool that I'm using calls it Punchcraft, because you're punching the needle through the material, I guess. but it's a technique which is, you know, been around for quite a long time. Other manufacturers do make similar tools, or tools that do similar jobs, and it sort of, I don't know, I'm trying to think some of the names that they call it, but I think some of them call it things like punch rugging or rug making, because it is a technique which is used to make rugs and some carpets. Only some, because some are done in a slightly different way. Woven carpets, for example. But sort of professional manufacturers of rugs use a similar technique to this, only they don't use one needle. They use about 1,000 needles all in one go, but they're doing exactly the same thing. Punching thread, or in their case wool, through the backing material and creating the carpet pattern or the rug pattern. How many have I made? This is the second one of the second in this series with the engine. The other one was a diesel locomotive, so made about 5, 6, 7, 8, probably about 10 or 12 actually in total. It doesn't sound a great deal, but I don't do this sort of thing continuously. I sort of do a lot of different crafts, so I sort of flip between things, and I've only started crafting regularly since I started streaming on Twitch. For about the past 3 years, for example, before I started, I'd hardly done any crafting at all. And yet, and then once I started broadcasting, it sort of has come back to me, if you like, the desire to do it. And I've done more art in the past few months than I've done in about the past 4 years. But a lot of the other pieces were of this kind. Were well over half of them are cats faces. They make quite good subjects to cats for any form of art, never mind just this one. What other types of art do I enjoy? Well, that's quite a list actually, Jasper, 5020. The ones that I do on stream, there's 5 that I do on stream, and that's pyrography, where I use a heated tool to actually sort of create images on wood. The heated tool actually changes the surface colour of the wood. I do relief carving with hand tools. So that's cutting shapes out of a solid block of wood, leaving them attached to like a back plate of the wood. So it's a bit like the image is sort of cut in half and stuck in a picture frame type of idea. There's another one which is called scraper board or scrape board, clay board work, and what that is it's a material where china clay is spread over a backing board and made flat, and then once that's dried it's coated in Indian ink, and then the image that you want to create is then made by scratching away that Indian ink over the clay, leaving the white exposed. And the ways, the different techniques and ways in which you do that then form the image, and that image can either be left black and white, or you can actually colour it with ink as well. So scraper board, pyrography, carving, this punchcraft. I also do on stream, technically it's chainmail, but it's jewellery making. It's making bracelets, necklaces, anklets, that sort of thing out of aluminium rings, or anodized aluminium rings, because there's lots of pretty colours involved. So technically it's chainmail, that's what the technique is called, but usually everybody thinks of armour making when you do that rather than jewellery. Off stream, I do rotary carving, which is using high-speed tools, things like a Dremel, but a heck of a lot better and a heck of a lot faster to carve with. Knife carving, so using knives rather than chisels. I do airbrushing on paper, or well, I say on paper because I've never used canvas yet, and I don't do cars. Glass engraving is one. Rug making, using this sort of technique, or another one which is a knotting technique called latch hook. And I make models, generally speaking radio control models, but I make trucks, and when I get round to it I want to make a bus as well, though I haven't decided just quite what type of bus at the moment. I also do various needle related arts like cross stitch and similar things to that. So that's about all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there's some I've missed out, but it's just as I say, I do flip between things, so I kind of I won't say get bored of doing one thing, but I do like to do lots of things and try new things out. I've got, for example, some plastic fusible beads at the other end of the studio here, which are waiting time, opportunity and the image that I want to make with them before I try those out. That's something I haven't yet tried, and I'm looking forward to doing at some point. Right, I think we'll leave that at that. Oh no, I'll come back one and then we'll leave it at that point. I'll come back because it'll then match where I've done the side sculpting. which will make a clean start on the next bit of this image. Actually, the one thing I did miss out is I quite enjoy electronic art as well, so either pure electronic art or things like sculpting and stuff like that. Now I did say to Jasper I'd explain when I pull this needle out just how it works. So the thread, which is held in the bobbin at the top because it's convenient to do so, is threaded right down the centre of the tool through this hollow needle, which has got a slant cut on it on the end, which makes it easier to go through material. But the thread is then pulled out through a small hole in the side, and it is important that it does that, because what happens is, as you push the material, push the needle through the material, kind of like if I was doing it through my hand like that, what happens is that the friction between the material and the needle, which of course has just made a little round gap, causes the thread to be held in position. So as the needle goes through, it drags more thread with it through the centre of the needle out the other side of the material. Then what happens is you start to pull it back. So I'll just exaggerate this a little bit. If you start to pull it back, there's no tension on the thread, so it basically wants to stay where it is. Friction is still holding the starting end, and as you can possibly see, that it's creating a loop as I pull back. And then as you eventually come right through the material closes over the thread, and you're left with a loop on the side. And then basically you do the same thing again, and exaggerate that a little bit, and you create a second loop. This one isn't quite as big, but as you keep going, you just create more and more loops like that. So I'll just thread that back into there, and put that to one side. So I'll just turn this over, because this is the back side. This is the front side. I'll drag this back a little bit, and this is just lots and lots of the loops, with the edges of. I can vary the length of the loop with that particular tool, and so as I get to the edge here, I shorten the loops so that it sort of basically falls away rather nicely, just curves away, and gives quite a nice neat edge. But that's a sort of image you're seeing it. Luckily this camera does give you sort of the 6 feet away, which is about the best sort of distance to view something this large. It's about 6 feet away. It looks slightly better 6 feet away than it does right close up, but thank you very much, Jasper 5020. That's very kind of you. And I must remember to fill in the 2 bits. Those of you guys who watch me regularly, remind me before Friday to fill in the 2 missing bits at the front of the engine, which should be grass. But there we go. So the rest of the sky has got to be all filled in, and this probably will take about 4 hours to do, given that this has taken about 3/4 of an hour, just this section of blue here. Anyway, unfortunately, that's stopping there was convenient, because it's about time. It's about that time of night, I'm afraid. It's the end of the stream. for this evening. Been broadcasting for just over 2 hours now. So what I'm going to say is thank you everybody that's been watching. It is fantastic to have you around. If there's anybody that's watching that isn't following, I do of course encourage you to do so, but it is entirely your choice. If you would just like Twitter to notify you when I go live, because I do tweet when I go live and not when I have my breakfast. So there's just art related tweets or stream related tweets, then you're quite welcome obviously to follow me. The details are below the stream window. They'll also be on the end plate in a moment, but it's quite simply at Zaragonaut. On the other hand, if you'd just like to try and catch me tomorrow, because my next stream will be tomorrow, assuming accidents and other emergencies of course, it will be at 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, or if you're in a different time zone, just take a look at your clock. Subtract about 2 hours 10 minutes ish from that clock, and that's going to be 8 o'clock at night, which is the time I'll be broadcasting tomorrow. Jasper 5020, thank you very much for following. That is very, I'm going to say very nice of you. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you doing that. Thank you. And with that, I'll look forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow night, or for any of the nightly streams. I do stream 7 nights a week. So thank you again for watching. Hope to see you again, and I'll say good night to you now. Bye bye.